Hello BookTube, I'm here today with the 10 favorite films tag. This tag was started by Baz Pierce, so of course his video will be down in the description bar. The basic premise of this tag is just to list your 10 favorite movies and give a little explanation why. My list is in no particular order. My first movie that I want to talk about is The Fall. This was a movie released in 2006. It's directed by Tarsem Singh and stars Lee Pace and a wonderful, precocious little girl named Katinka Intaro. The basic premise of this movie is that there is a man in a hospital who is telling this epic adventure story to a little girl. And includes such characters as a man who just emerges from a tree to a very kind of strange take on Darwin, and of course the Red Bandit. The main reason I chose this movie is because of the cinematography. It is just such a beautiful movie. It was filmed over a period of 4 years in over 20 different countries, and there is minimal CGI. The only time they use CGI is to take away like stunt wires and such, but everything you see in the movie is real. It is absolutely beautiful. I also like that a lot of the interactions between Lee and Katinka, who plays this little girl, is improvised on the little girl's part. I'm going to read this quote by Roger Ebert because I think it sums up why I love this movie so much. "You might want to see it, for no other reason than because it exists. There will never be another like it." Number 2 on my list is a movie called Baraka. This was released in 1992. I actually included it at this point because it actually inspired a lot of the shots that we see in The Fall. And it is also a very beautiful movie. It's a documentary without dialogue. It's the work of Ron Frick, who's often called the master of cinematography. One of my favorite scenes is called the Kikak Bali Monkey Chant, and this is almost on scene for scene in The Fall. I'll put a link to the scene that I'm talking about down below so you can watch it. I think his ability to meld this soundtrack perfectly with the scenes, whether it be a tribal chant or the epic original score, just makes this movie a must-see movie. This next movie takes things in a completely different direction and is called A Shot in the Dark. This was released in 1964 and it is the second of the original Pink Panther movies, starring Clouseau, a really kind of bumbling detective. It stars Peter Sellers as Clouseau, and we follow him as he's investigating a murder and he falls in love with the prime suspect. It's a very physical comedy, and actually a lot of the physicality of it was actually choreographed kind of on the fly. And there's just this one great scene that I'm going to include right here.
Now then, there is something that I am very interested to know. This room looks very... What happened? What?
You fell off the sofa, you stupid.
I know I fell off the sofa, madame. There's no need to tell me. Everything I do is carefully planned, madame. I know that.
The 4th movie on my list is 12 Angry Men. This is the 1957 version, starring Henry Fonda and Lee J. Cobb amongst a wonderful cast. This film occurs almost exclusively in one small room, and there's almost always this fan going on in the background. But I think this really allows for the dialogue and the characters to really shine. So this movie follows 12 jurors as they deliberate on whether a young man is guilty of murdering his father, and if they find him guilty, he gets the death penalty. And most of the jurors at the beginning of the movie believe that he's guilty, except for this one man, played by Henry Fonda, who says, "Not so quick, like this is a young man that we're sending to the death penalty. maybe we should talk things over. And just through his use of logic and breaking down of personal prejudices, he's able to finally convince them that there is a lot of probable doubt that he committed this crime, and they all vote not guilty. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when Lee J. Cobb's character starts espousing all his prejudice and racism, and slowly, one by one, the different jurors stand up and turn their back on him. Fifth movie on this list is called Wristcutters, A Love Story, and it was released in 2006. This is a black comedy starring Patrick Fugit and Shannon Sossamon, who is one of my favorite actresses. It has a wonderful soundtrack that features Gogol Bordello, which is a Ukrainian band. The basic premise is that people who commit suicide are sent to this afterlife where they basically go on about their daily lives, but everything's just a little worse. For example, no one can smile. There's even one character where his whole family is there because I'm laughing because it's a comedy, but his whole family has committed suicide. And, you know, they're just kind of living out their daily lives. We follow Zia, Eugene, and Mikhail as they journey. They're looking for Zia's girlfriend, who apparently has committed suicide after he did, and the people in charge, because Mikhail believes that she's there by accident. And I think this is such a charming movie, because it's such an interesting way to look at such a morbid issue as suicide. You know, normally when we have these tragic love stories of love and suicide, they're dramas and you feel sad, but this is a feel-good movie. Number 6 on my list is Labyrinth. Released in 1986, this movie was directed by Jim Henson, with music by David Bowie. It stars David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly. Jennifer Connelly plays this girl, Sarah, who is in love with books and fantasy and has this evil stepmother, and she's left to babysit her baby brother and makes this wish that her baby brother would be kidnapped by goblins. And to her surprise, he is. Sarah then makes this bargain with Jareth, the Goblin King, played by Hubba Hubba David Bowie. And the deal is, if she can make it to his castle by going through this labyrinth, she can have her baby brother back. Now, this features some really great Jim Henson puppets. Apparently, I read this while looking up some interesting tidbits about movies. Jareth is influenced by both Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights and Rochester from Jane Eyre, so I thought that was really neat. So I could not make this list without including this next movie, and that is Star Wars. The whole series. It was first released in 1977. They are currently making the 7th movie. I think it's in pre-production. And just, how could I not include this movie? I mean, Harrison Ford is Han Solo, amazing, and it has one of the most recognizable scores of all time. And I don't know what else I can say besides it's Star Wars, and if you haven't seen it, I feel really, really sorry for you, and you should go out and watch it right now. Number 8 is Shoot 'em Up, and this movie was released in 2007, and it is just a very ultra-violent movie. It stars Clive Owen and Monica Bellucci, and it has one of the most absurd plot lines and scenes, but it's just so much fun to watch. So this movie follows Smith. He's a man obsessed with carrots and a lactating prostitute as they try to save a baby from a group of assassins led by Paul Giamatti. This movie is really fun. The character Smith is kind of like a bad guy with a heart of gold. There's one scene where he sees a guy with a ponytail and he says, "I hate these 40-year-old men with ponytails trying to reclaim their youth. They just look like idiots." And then he shoots the guy's ponytail off. That's the kind of movie we're talking about here. Number 9 on my list is Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and this was released in 1995. I believe, in my personal opinion, that this is Jim Carrey at his nonsensical comedic best. I love the character of Ace Ventura, and I love it in this movie because it's just line after line, scene after scene of laughs. This is the sequel to Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Ace is brought to a fictional country in Africa after hiding out in a monastery, and he has to save a giant white bat called Shikaka. And he's afraid of bats. And this is just one movie that I've seen so many times. It is ingrained into my brain. I know every line in the movie. And when I want something where I don't want to think, I just want to laugh, I put in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. This last movie on my list, I would say, is probably my most favorite movie. And it's called The History Boys, and it was released in 2006. It's based on a play and actually features the original cast. It includes some of my all-time favorite actors, including Richard Griffiths, aka Mr. Dursley, Russell Tovey, Dominic Cooper, and James Corden. It follows a group of boys as they prepare to take their entrance exams in history so that they can go to Oxford and Cambridge. But it also spends just as much time looking at the teachers as the students. And it just, the way it presents the study of history is brilliant. It's presented in ways that you don't normally think of. They spend a lot of time looking at subjunctive history, or what ifs. They do a lot of eccentric studies. So they have a course called General Studies where they just study everything. There's actually one scene where they're doing French, and Richard Griffiths, the teacher, allows them to create a scene about prostitutes. So they're in class talking in French, and this guy's getting undressed, and then the principal walks in. And he kind of gives them this funny look, and they're just like, oh no, you know, we're reenacting a battle scene. And they do this kind of like really hilarious transition from a brothel scene into a battle reenactment. The overall theme of this movie is one of acceptance of all people and their different ways. From, you know, a really interesting look at sexuality, to lying, to just witty situations. And I can't say enough about this movie to make you go watch it. It is brilliantly done. The music is wonderful. The scenes are wonderful. The acting is wonderful. Everything about this movie.
Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Cheerio, here I go.